we want to give something for women that's not going to make them feel lesser than. That's not going to make them feel, oh, well, I don't fit into that category. I don't look like her. I went on this mission to heal my body, and in doing so, healed so many other facets of my life, my relationships, my confidence, my career, healed basically everything. Our bodies are meant to change. So from the time that we get our first period to this time that we get our last, our body is meant to be different. It is not meant to stay the same. I need to help women feel better. There's a better way for us.
The Big Silence, empowering personal experiences, inspiring compassion, and healing lives. We are no longer silent. We are here.
The Big Silence.
All right. I'm excited to have Josie Santi on the Big Silence podcast today. I have already had a conversation with you on Everygirl podcast, and I was like, I want to know more about you. And so here you are. Welcome.
Here I am. Thank you, Karena. And I'm so happy to talk to you again. We had such an amazing conversation. I learned so much from you. So I'm excited to get to talk to you again.
Yeah. So first, let's go into Everygirl. So founded in 2012, and you're the senior wellness editor and podcast host. So tell us what Everygirl is.
So the Everygirl is basically, I keep calling it it's like Barbieland, because it is a site, a resource, a podcast, social channels, all for women. It was kind of founded back in 2012 when, really the only media for women was like Vogue, and it had this one type of women. It had very expensive clothing items. So my founder, our CEO, they started the company thinking, we want to give something for women that's not going to make them feel lesser than. That's not going to make them feel, oh, well, I don't fit into that category. I don't look like her. They really wanted to provide a resource that helped women feel their best and learn and get ahead in their career and optimize their health in a way that made them feel better instead of worse, like a lot of other media outlets were doing. So we've been doing that for over 10 years now, have expanded into the Every Mom. It's been a very wild ride, but it's been so much fun. And now we have the Everygirl podcast that launched in 2022, which is bringing that exact same mission to help women feel really amazing in their life without feeling like they're lesser than, or without feeling like they're not already good enough as they are. So that's been our really big mission, is helping women want to live their best lives and give them the tools to do that without feeling like, oh, but I'm not good enough right now.
Yeah, I love that. And you joined the team in 2012 or 2017.
2017. Yes.
I love that. And it's so interesting too, because before we started recording, I was asking you more about Everygirl and realizing that you all have been around since 2012, and Tone It Up was founded in 2009. And we're finally just crossing these paths, and our mission has been the same this entire time.
Totally. I actually remember old school. I think this must have been 2018. I remember covering the Tone It Up bands and the Tone It Up protein powder. I remember that. You just saying that right now sparked that memory in me. I'm I remember covering you guys. So the fact that we haven't worked together, totally, it's been a missed opportunity until this point.
Yeah, I love this. Okay. So you obviously have a passion for, like myself, for providing a resource for women to live their happiest, healthiest lives. So let's go back to you, Josie. Why do you have that passion? Because typically it comes from somewhere within, where you have your own healing and your own discovery of how you can heal. And then you want to share that message.
With wellness, there's always the aha moment. Everyone always has an aha moment. For me, my aha moment was really around my period. And it was a lot of also anxiety. So when I was about 12, two major events happened to my body. I had my first severe panic attack, and I also got my period within that same year. So ever since then, I had struggled with really bad anxiety related to health. And I also had really, really bad periods. I would have, be on all these prescription painkillers that my doctor put me on. Nothing was working. I went on oral birth control. I still had really bad cramps, really heavy bleeding, but it was kind of we'll just manage the symptoms as much as possible. At the same time, I had seen kind of I grew up in diet culture. You know, we saw the celebrities that were very skinny. Wellness content out there was really about how to lose weight, how to look a certain way. So I had grown up feeling like I am so disconnected from my body, but I'm not a health girl. Like I'm not into health and nutrition and fitness and all these things. Like I'm not like that. And then I had gone to college. Long story, became very interested in religious studies and studying Eastern religions. And I came across this thing called Ayurveda, which for people who don't know, it's the most ancient form of medicine that's still being practiced today. But it was a wake-up call for me that made me realize, oh, wait, the way you treat your body is not just about losing weight, which I know now sounds so obvious, but back then it wasn't. You know, back then that's not what we knew.
No,
It was right. It was like
look, not
how you look. Exactly. It was all about here's how to look a certain way. And so that was a huge aha moment for me was, oh, I can actually use my body as a tool to live my best life. I can treat my body in a way that helps me feel better in my life, that helps me be happy, that helps my relationships. So ever since then, I went on this mission to heal my body. And in doing so, healed so many other facets of my life, my relationships, my confidence, my career, healed basically everything. And I really wanted to help other women do the same because I saw so many other women, especially at the time I was in the fashion industry. So I saw so many other women feeling so disconnected with their bodies, feeling like they're not good enough. And I was like, I need to help women feel better. There's a better way for us.
I love that. Preach. Same here. I want to go back though to when you're 12 years old and you have your first panic attack. Did you know it was a panic attack?
No, I literally thought that it started because I was like so full after eating dinner. I was on vacation with my whole family. And it was just this feeling of like, I'm so uncomfortable. I feel like I'm going to throw up. And it was this worry of throwing up. And then it was this feeling like anyone who's had a panic attack knows where you're like, I cannot get out of my skin. I cannot like, I need to like leave this planet. It felt like in this moment of like, I just need to get out of my body somehow. And I had no awareness. My mom, thank God, was like very well versed in mental health. So she kind of knew. And my sister was also, had gone through a lot of her own therapy. And so she also had a lot of knowledge. So luckily they knew, but at the time I had no idea. I thought I was dying. I thought I was like literally about to die.
Was the panic attack, you were full? Was it the feeling of fullness, the feeling of diet culture and fullness? Like what really led to that in your brain?
That's a great question. Yes. Cause I know a lot of people have anxiety related to like diet culture, weight gain. For me, it was more like I felt so full that I was worried about throwing up. And there was something about being not in control. Like at that point, like throwing up to me kind of sparked an anxiety about throwing up. Like that was kind of how my anxiety started is because, and the therapy I've done since have kind of highlighted this to me, that it's about feeling out of control in your body. Like throwing up typically is a response that a lot of us cannot control. So it was the feeling of like, oh my gosh, am I going to throw up? That felt so out of control for my body and that triggered it. Since then it kind of has swayed, for a while it was about vomiting and I would have such anxiety about nausea or being in situations where that could happen. It kind of also went into like, I started having a lot of anxiety about my heart. When I was 22, I went to the ER because I thought I was having a heart attack. That's what we talked about that. I know. That's Karena understands. Yes, I know. And then you feel so crazy because they're like, we've run every test and you're like, no, I'm sure something's happening to me. I'm dying.
I'm dying.
And it was rooted, it was all anxiety. And so that was kind of like the root of it was feeling out of control of my body from like a health perspective.
Yeah. And number one, I'm laughing about it now. It's not something to laugh about, but as you and I know, and someone who has discovered what anxiety is and and you feel it and how now, I'm able to control it to a certain amount. But at 12 years old, I realized I had it as a kid sitting in school and didn't even know. And my heart was racing. And I was like, I'm dying at probably 10 years old, And so I think it's so important to educate our children and teach them the tools and to tell them it's okay. And just talking about it now, like if I knew that there was such a thing as anxiety and how to control it, and maybe learning how to meditate at 10 years old, like it would
Oh my gosh. I mean, imagine how I always think of that, like how my childhood would have been differently. If I had known, oh, this is anxiety, I can do something about it. It would have changed so many core memories that we have.
Yeah. And speaking on anxiety too, for anyone listening who has experienced and does experience, it's hard. And it's especially for me, I don't know, what about you? Like it's waking up in the morning. For me, it's do you still have that, or have you found the fountain of
That's,
Sure.
oh God, if only there was the secret magic button you could just push and be like, boop, all my anxiety goes away. I definitely have for sure felt like it's a lot more under control in the past few years of my life. But that is interesting. I know I've heard definitely like the morning for me as well, which is interesting, like how it changes with like your cortisol levels naturally raising, so yes, morning is a big one for me. And then it would mostly be specific triggers, and that has changed throughout. But like for a while, I did not want to go to like a big crowd because it just, which I know is common for a lot of people, like I felt trapped. I felt like, oh, well, I can't escape if I'm in a crowd. So it's mostly like environmentally triggered, but definitely like morning. I agree with you. It's that was a big time where you'd wake up and just feel that automatic sense of like, oh God, there's something wrong. There's a tiger coming to get me. I'm feeling it.
Well, I think I try to analyze mornings all the time because I wake up out of a dream state. Like, where am I? It's like first it takes
What's going on?
I travel a lot. So like, first, where am I? Two, what day it is. And so it's like, how do you wake up in a state of just like zen?
That's always the question.
Can you tell me?
I have tried. I always say that how you feel in the morning starts the night before. So if you like go to sleep as peacefully as possible, I think for a lot of people who do wake up with that worry of like, oh, I got to get to this and this, and there's this thing I have to take care of. It's helpful sometimes to go to bed the night before and like go through okay, this is the to-do list for the next day. I don't need to worry. Everything is taken care of. I have time to get everything done. So I think starting the night before has been something that helps me. But also just like knowing that your body's cortisol naturally spikes in the morning. So if you are dealing with elevated cortisol and stress related with anxiety, that can spike in the morning. So I think for me being like, I'm going to wake up extra early so that I have nothing else that's going to spike my cortisol. I want to feel like I can wake up, lie in bed, get up leisurely as much as possible. Again, I don't have children. I know that we talked about like this is different for mothers. But that's been something that's been really helpful for me is like let me treat my mornings like my most stress-free time of my day as much as possible. And that has helped kind of that initial like proneness to get into anxiety first thing waking up.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. Even this morning, I woke up even before my husband and was like, go downstairs, quiet. The Pomeranians are still asleep.
You got to get it before the dogs wake up. That's key. That's key.
I meditated and I made some coffee and I was like, okay, today's going to be a good day. It's that mindset shift. But one thing that you talk about a lot is women's mental health and our cycles and fertility. And we haven't talked about that topic on the podcast yet. And I would love to deep dive into all of that.
Oh, I love it. Okay. I'm so happy that you're bringing this conversation to your listeners because when we talk about mental health and stress relief, for me, I've learned if you are a person that has a reproductive cycle, it is inescapable to talk about your cycle with mental health. They are so intertwined in so many ways, and I can get into that. But I think it's such an important piece of the conversation around mental health. But also, as women, it's wild to me that we do not have access to this blueprint that's basically telling us, here is what your body needs. Here's what to do to allow your body to thrive. Here's how your body's communicating with you. And we are not taught that. Like, I would give anything to go back to my 12-year-old Josie and be like, here is your blueprint, right? Like, this is what you do. Your period is not your enemy.
Right. You're just like, I was 12 years old too when I got my period and my mom wasn't around. I was like, what is this?
Yeah. Right. What do I do?
Thrown into it. Like,
Yes, I know. And I don't know if it was like that for you, but for me, it was so embarrassing. Like, I didn't want to like go tell my friends. It was like this embarrassing thing of like, oh my God, I have my period. Like, that's so embarrassing and icky.
well, don't you think even as adults, there's like a stigma around, oh, I'm bleeding. And
So much.
Maybe it started even as a kid. I remember, we'll just go into it. But as a kid going to, what are we in? Junior high, high school, and wearing pads and like bleeding through during class and having to stand up and walk down the hallways.
I mean, remember like covering your books, like being like trying to so stealthily like put your books behind you to cover your pants.
But like no one
awful.
talked about it. Everyone would look at you.
No, it's so sad. I know. It's traumatizing. I even remember like when I first got my period, I went to the school nurse. I didn't even want to tell her that I got my period. I pretended like I was sick so I would get to go home. And I didn't even, for some reason, I was so embarrassed about it. I didn't want to tell anyone. I even like my mom, I didn't even tell till later that night. And I was like, please don't tell dad or my sister. And I look back like I'm so sad how embarrassed I was. And so I think that that's like the first big connection is that most of us have our periods, seeing it as something that creates shame and that creates stress for us in itself. And that is like the first big misconnect that I think we as women like really have to address because there is so much power in our cycles. You know, it is not just about you're able to get pregnant and create life, which in itself, that's freaking cool. But the things your body is doing throughout the month is miraculous. It is crazy. It is doing all these different things to help every organ in your body. Ovulation is like a superpower. Like we are so focused on the period part of it. We don't even know what's happening in all the other phases. So that's why a big mission for me has been like teaching women about their different phases and how you actually can and need to be optimizing your health for these phases because that is how your body thrives. You know, your body knows exactly what to do. You kind of just have to like listen to it and get out of its way is what I always say. So when it comes to mental health and stress, there are some like a few very important connections that I would love for your audience, especially to hear, also all women to hear. The first one is called the hormone hierarchy. This always, like when it comes to stress, this blows people's mind. Okay, so the hormone hierarchy basically states that like all hormones affect each other. And it kind of is like this hierarchy where some hormones affect everything else. And it's kind of like a ripple effect. So at the very top of the hormone hierarchy are the happy hormones like oxytocin and the stress hormones like cortisol. And then below that are the reproductive hormones. So basically, the first thing that means is that cortisol affects your reproductive hormones. So the way that you're stressed can affect your period, can affect other hormones. It can create things like PCOS, but it can also cause, really bad cramps. It can create difficulty to conceive. Anything having to do with your reproductive health can be affected by cortisol. But at the very top of the hormone hierarchy is oxytocin, which for people who don't know, that's the love hormone. That's what you feel when you snuggle your dog or you're laughing with your friends or you hug someone. That hormone is at the top of the hierarchy, so it affects all other hormones. So when you want to lower cortisol, the immediate kind of quickest thing to do is increase your oxytocin, increase your love hormone, hug someone, laugh, feel happy, snuggle your dog. It kind of works like a teeter-totter with cortisol so that when your oxytocin levels go higher, your cortisol goes lower. So I just think that's always like a really useful skill to understand that. Like that's a part of stress relief that we don't typically understand and talk about. But then also that correlation, that kind of like teeter-totter balance of the oxytocin and the cortisol is also then affecting your reproductive hormones. So that's kind of like the first big piece of how they tie together. Another thing that also is really helpful to know is that cortisol changes throughout your cycle as well. Cortisol, the stress hormone, is a hormone. So it is related to all your other hormones. And you actually increase cortisol production in your second half of your cycle. Like when you're 2 weeks away from your period, your cortisol levels naturally start to raise. So the purpose of that, I always think it's cool to like learn the purpose so that you're not just like, oh, another way my period's cursing me. Like, no, your body is so freaking smart. The reason it does that is so if you were, pregnant, if you did have a, fetus starting to grow, you are on hyper alert aware. So you can protect that fetus. That's kind of like back to the caveman days, why our cortisol spikes in the second half of our cycle. Why that's important for us to know now is to be like, whoa, that's so cool that my body knows to do that as a protective mechanism for me and as like a protective mechanism for our evolution as a species. So what that means is in the second half of your cycle, you really got to be conscious of your stress relief practices. You should not try to be doing things that are spiking cortisol, like HIIT workouts or, intermittent fasting or sleeping less. Like these are things that are actually spiking our cortisol, and that could be causing, that can disrupt hormones in so many different ways. But that's also a cause of what we're seeing a lot of chronic cortisol and a lot of also even anxiety tied to these kind of chronic elevated cortisol when we're not working in alignment with our body. So if you have chronic cortisol, if you feel like you're stressed out, if you're even dealing with anxiety, something I beg you to try is to be really mindful in the 2 weeks before your period of your stress levels. Do everything you can to keep your stress levels down, wake yourself up slowly, get extra sleep. Do not do any like really intense, rigorous workout. Don't intermittent fast. Only drink caffeine after you've eaten because that also spikes cortisol. Do all these things. And I have seen the biggest transformation when it comes to mental health for women when they are more conscious of being in sync with their hormones, cortisol being the big one.
I love that you mentioned your workouts a couple times there because I will throw in here in the Tone It Up app, we have cycle syncing workouts.
I know you do.
Yeah. And a lot of people are like, what is that? I'm like, so we make it easy for you because it's very confusing.
It is.
That we're literally just having these conversations. It's very new.
100%.
So I love that. And the more education we can give to women on how our bodies change during our cycle and how we need to take care of ourselves and when we need to be slower and when we need, like when we're our most creative and, all of that. So I love that. And we talked about the stigma of starting our periods. And I just want to bring up the stigma of ending our periods.
Oh, let's talk about that.
I mean, I'm just saying there is that stigma too. Like, how do we break that? And then as women, we go through more hormonal changes. And like, how do we end the stigma? What can we do? In your opinion, not that you have to have the answer for us, but like, there is that stigma still around women starting and women ending.
100%. There is it's almost like we can't win. Like we felt shame and we felt guilt and all these bad feelings when we start our period. And then women going through menopause feel this shame about that as well. I think that it really is vocalizing that these things happen, that we feel shame. I think naming it takes away its power, so when we name, I feel this way, I feel shame, the more and more women are doing that. Yeah. I think that that's the way we end the stigma around it. But I also think that as women, we are so used to being told that our bodies should be more like men. And why I say that is because I know, Karena, you are an expert on this, but we have been told for years, HIIT workouts are the best thing, intermittent fasting, like go really hard at the gym, drink smoothies every single day, high protein, no carbs. Like we've been taught all these things because they're based on studies that are mainly done by men, or if they do include women, it is postmenopausal women because they are aware that the cycle, having a reproductive cycle, will impact the study. So these studies in the past have chosen to avoid women during their reproductive ages. So what that means is that we've been taught you should be the same. You have the same 24 hours, go on a 24-hour cycle. Our entire society is built around you wake up and do the same thing every day. We're taught the morning routine of you work out every single day and you kind of do the same thing and your evening routine is the same. And we're just taught the sameness as if we're men. And so I think that knowing that women need and deserve to live cyclically, which means you change the way that you're living and eating and breathing and thinking and moving throughout your cycle, but also throughout your life. Like our bodies are meant to change. So from the time that we get our first period to this time that we get our last, our body is meant to be different. It is not meant to stay the same. I think that women also feel a lot of panic when their bodies change in terms of weight. If we put on a few pounds or gain weight or lose weight, I think it's this panic of like, oh my gosh, my body is changing, especially as we age and the body does want to hold on to more weight. We feel like that's something wrong with us. We feel like now we're less worthy or we're less attractive. You see all the time women postpartum after they've had babies and they're focused on getting back to their pre-baby weight. Like we're so programmed to think our bodies are not meant to change instead of celebrating like women have this amazing gift that we get to be cyclical. Our bodies are meant to always be changing, and that includes throughout the month, and that includes throughout our lives. So getting to the stage where your body's changing again, you're going through perimenopause, then you're going through menopause, like that's another beautiful change we can celebrate instead of panicking that our body is different than it was before.
Yeah. Let's talk about women and pregnancy and weight. Myself, don't have children. But there is that pressure, which is another crazy pressure and stigma of women. We're gaining weight to birth and carry child. And they're like, oh my God, she gained 60 pounds. Oh my God. Wow, she still hasn't lost. Like, that is awful. Awful.
It's crazy. It's so crazy. And even I feel like I even found myself doing it. I saw a friend recently who had given birth and I, in my head said, I was about to say, oh, you look great. And I caught myself and I was like, who the fuck cares if she looks great? She just birthed a human out of her body. Like that is, I'm not going to let that be the thing that I say. So even when it's in a quote positive way, we still have this emphasis of like, your body's not supposed to change. And we're focusing on the way that the body looks instead of, holy shit, the female body, look what you just did.
I know. I wonder like who was actually doing the bullying. Do you know Iskra?
No.
Okay. Iskra. She's a friend of mine. She lives here in Austin.
Okay.
And she's pregnant with baby number 2. And she walked a swim show for Miami Swim Week. And she got so much like, get her off this stage. What is she doing? I'm like,
oh my God.
Like what century are we in?
Literally, what century are we in? The fact that, and I'm sure a lot of the comments were probably women, which like we expect it's like, oh, it's like misogynistic men, but there's so much ingrained misogyny that it is said, like, especially as an all-female organization and like an organization, a company for women, a lot of the people that will respond to negative comments, like, when we'll post a diverse body type and get comments like, I don't want to see that body type. I expected for a while, oh, that's got to be like some misogynistic man. And it was a woman. And so I took a lot of time to like really understand that, to like understand how much it's internalized, how we have, as women, have been taught to be pitted against each other, and our insecurities feel so, put upon us that we project our insecurities on other people. Like there's so much there that it's sad. I think that the biggest thing we can do is realize where we have internalized misogyny still, and like where we're tempted to be like, oh, she's gained some weight, or like that doesn't look good on her, because that's coming from our own insecurities. And like starting there, if we did that, the world would change.
Yeah. And I do believe that the world has changed even since I've been in the public women's fitness wellness space since 2009. And then Everygirl since 2012. Like change has been made, but look at how much change still needs to be made.
Absolutely.
So, like if you're listening to this and you're out there having a positive voice for the female, like keep doing what you're doing. It's a lot more needs to be done. So yeah. I love what you were doing. And that would lead me into, I want to talk about manifestation and career.
Oh, you're just hitting all my favorite topics, Karena.
So you seem to be in a career that is so passionate to you. and you get to have all these great conversations and talk about all the wellness things that you love. Like just talk about how you manifested this career, and any tips for anyone listening who wants to work in a space where they're making a difference and speaking about what they're passionate about.
This is such a great question. I have come to believe that manifestation is really just self-esteem. That's all it is. I think that, in recent years, especially, which I love the manifestation train that's like the vision board and manifestation journaling. I love all that. But I think when it comes to getting the career that I have and all the things that I look at and think I manifest in my life, it really started and came to fruition because I decided that I deserved it and that I decided I was worthy of it. And I changed the beliefs that I felt were holding me back. For example, with the podcast, that was like something I had always wanted to do, but I had told myself for so long, who wants to listen to me talk? Like I'm not good in a mic. Like who wants to listen to me? And so I had to rewrite that belief. And that takes a lot of work. It's not just like the fluffy affirmations of like, let me tell myself, no, I am amazing. People do want to listen to me. It's like changing a lot of those beliefs of like, where does that come from? I like to say that self-esteem is kind of our ceiling. So you achieve what you think you're capable of. If you think that you're only worthy of, it's only possible for you to make, I don't know, 30,000 a year, that is your ceiling. If you think it's possible and that you're deserving of making $1 million a year, that's your ceiling. I personally would much rather have a much higher ceiling. So I did a lot of work to change my self-esteem. So that's the biggest thing for me is I think that we have so many internalized beliefs that are holding us back that we aren't even aware of. Even if you think you really want a certain type of job or you really want a raise or you really want a career path, but there's the little thought in your head that's like, but do you really deserve that? Are you really good enough? But don't you see all these other people that are doing it better than you can? That is holding you back from getting it. So it's not always about wanting. It's a lot about what you internally think you deserve. So when you change that, that's when I have seen my life change. That's when I've seen people that I've coached. That's when their life changes, is rewriting that internalized belief. So another example of this is, I think it's so easy for us to look on social media and be like, especially podcast hosts, what's another podcast? Like, look at all these other podcasts that are doing it way better than I could do it. And everyone's already listening to this podcast and that podcast. Why would they want to listen to mine? I think a lot of people, it's so easy to feel that way when you look on social media. You see all these people that are living the life that you wish that you had. You see people doing what you wish that you were doing, or you see, founders and CEOs and whatever your career path is. You see all these other people living the life that you want. So it's easy when you get in those instances to think, why should I have it? Because they already do. I think the biggest thing is to switch that of, that's proof that I can do it too. Mm-hmm. That's not evidence that I shouldn't do it, that there's, a scarcity that I can't do it now because it already exists. That's proof of, whoa, if she can be the top podcast in the whole world and she's a woman, that's just evidence that I can also do that. It's like looking at it as evidence. I think something else that has really helped me is seeing jealousy or envy as a mirror into what you're meant to have rather than what you don't have. So when you do feel that moment of like, ugh, I'm jealous of my friend because she's making so much money. She feels so financially secure. I think instead of looking at that as a place of like, I'm envious because I don't have that, because she has something I don't have. Instead, it's like the little switch of, I am envious of that because I know that's what I'm meant for, because that's what I will have. I see my friend being financially free and feeling really secure in her finances. That's proof that I can do that too. That's not evidence that I can't have that because she does. So it's like those tiny little mindset switches that I think when we talk about career and it's all about, asking for a raise and career tips, I think we're missing the biggest point, which is just shifting those little beliefs that are enforcing the actions that you're making every single day that then add up to the career that you want to have.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying, because I'm at the point in my life where I'm like, I'll ask for anything.
I love it, Karena. Yes.
What do I have to lose? And so it is. And I come from a place of little confidence, even 15, 16, 17 years ago. I was confident in a certain way, but I was shy. But then it takes time to then ask for what you learned over time your worthiness is, because we are all worthy. But what is something, like, I feel like someone who's really struggling with confidence, like really, but they know they have a dream, but they don't believe in it. A simple, instead of like a mindset shift, what is an actionable shift that they're going to be scared as hell to do, but they're going to realize that they can do it?
Okay. I love that. I'm always on my podcast. I'm like, I love it, but give me the tangible steps. Like, what's the step we're going to take? So I just realized you're doing that to me, that I do, is I'm like, yes, but give me the tips. Give me the action steps to do. So one thing that I would say that I have seen, like, I have worked with many, many women coaching, and a big root of a lot of the issues women face is lack of confidence. So something that I've seen have the biggest change is working actually on self-efficacy, which is based trusting yourself. It's kind of like a cornerstone of self-esteem, of confidence. So it's knowing that you can trust your own word. You know, if you say you're going to do something, do it. So what I would do today is, what's something small that feels doable for you, but that is something you avoid. So maybe it's like, I'm going to schedule a workout. Maybe it's, I'm going to take time to like put my finances in my Excel sheet, and no one wants to do that, but I always tell myself I'm going to do it, never do. What's like one of those little things? Cleaning your kitchen. It could be like literally anything that you typically put off. Just say, I'm going to do it tonight, or I'm going to do it this week, or on Saturday when I have 2 hours of free time, I'm going to do it then, and then actually do it. Even if that doesn't feel like it's related to your career, you are building trust in yourself. So you are proving to yourself, okay, I'm telling myself I will do this, and I do it. That is building self-efficacy, which is a key part of confidence. So the more and more that you build that self-efficacy, the more and more you teach yourself, I am trustworthy. I keep my word. I do what I say I'm going to do. The more and more your self-esteem will raise and say, oh, well, I was capable of that workout. I can be capable of other things too. So that does so much, like that little thing of just keeping your own word, planning something and following through with it, does so much for your self-esteem. And so like, if it is that you're like, I really want to start this business, but I have no confidence. I feel like I would be so bad at this. No one's going to trust this. I say start there. Start realizing that you actually can do things that you say you're going to do. So that, yes, these things might sound small of getting a workout, but you build up to being like, oh, well, I've done all these things. I scheduled a workout and I did it. I cleaned the kitchen. I did it. I, went on a date, even though it was really scary, and I did it. I'm learning that I can actually do things so that when it comes to, maybe I can start a business, because look at all these other things that I said I was going to do and did. Mm-hmm. So it's like building your self-efficacy to build your confidence.
I love that answer. And it is so true for anyone listening. It's the tiny things that then you build up. And I'll quickly say something for myself. When I didn't believe in myself at all and never had follow through, and I thought I would never achieve anything in my life, and I signed up for the triathlon that I did, and I trained for it, hated every moment of it, but I crossed that finish line and I committed to myself and I finished something. And then I was like, I can do anything. And then it was like, wow, you can achieve. And even the little things too, like keeping your house clean, making your bed. I love that example. It starts small and then keep building on it. It's a perfect example. It doesn't have to be so scary. So just keep building.
Absolutely. Start small. Make your bed or do the triathlon. Could never be me.
Either one.
You could be Karena. Yeah. Do that.
I mean, I probably started small without even intention or knowing it. And
yeah, totally. Yeah. You work your way up. You like do what feels doable. And then you continue to prove to yourself you can.
I love that. And so you mentioned you do one-on-one training.
I do.
You do?
Yes, I've done group coaching and one-on-one.
Yeah. Where do we find you? Because I'm coming to you.
Come to me anytime. I'll give you a friends and family discount. Well, so the Everygirl podcast, obviously, but my health coaching business is called Wellness for Josie. I also post a lot of wellnessy tips on Instagram. But I have a bunch of like all group programs, one-on-one sessions on wellnessbyjosie.com.
Perfect. And we'll put all that in the show notes. Any last things you
Same.
want to share? You've given so many great tips in this.
Oh my gosh. I'm like, can I stay chatting forever? It's just so fun. My favorite topics. Love you so much. It was so fun. I love so much what you're doing. I think obviously, I mean, this is like beating a dead horse because anyone knows how important mental health is. But like we talked about when you came on the Everygirl podcast, it is a conversation that like, I don't know why we're still not comfortable with it. Actually, kind of like periods where, you know, we still have trouble talking about periods, but people still, even with like therapy speak becoming more common and mainstream, people still struggle with saying, I'm struggling with this. You know, like I think even at work, it's hard to say, I'm struggling with my mental health today. It's still such a taboo topic. So you having the conversations you have is so important. And I love what you're doing, and being vulnerable about your story has really inspired me to be vulnerable about mine. So it's just been a joy to chat with you again.
So thank you, Josie. I will see you online and maybe in person one day. You're in Chicago,
Hopefully.
right?
I'm in LA.
LA.
But I used to live in Chicago. Our company's based in Chicago, but I also love Austin. So I hope to come back soon. So hopefully I'll see you then.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karena.
The big silence. The big silence.